Hey everyone, welcome to the latest edition of Courageous Conversations, and I am thrilled to have the REINSW CEO, Tim McKibbin, with me. Hey Tim.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, going really
We're
well.
talking today in a slightly different format.
Yeah, we are. I mean, people are very used to seeing us banter with each other about real estate issues, but today you've got a really interesting story, and I get lots of great feedback about the stuff that we do together and how knowledgeable and passionate you are about the industry. But I know you've got a really interesting backstory, and I thought it'd be lovely to share that a little bit more widely.
Yes, okay. So I started out on working on a mine in Broken Hill. I was born in Broken Hill, and my very first job was an apprentice electrician.
Does that explain the cowboy boots?
No, but I spent plenty of time in the bush. So yeah, I started on the mines when I was 15, when I left year 10 at school. Yep. And then finished my apprenticeship 4 years later at 19. Spent 3 of those 4 years working underground in the mines.
How was that?
So dark and wet, and if you go down far enough, hot. Yeah. So
you didn't get claustrophobic?
No, no. I mean, the funny part about it is the levels that are closer to the surface.
Yeah.
Are more sort of closed in because they're the very old ones. But when you go right down, they're a lot bigger. Right. They're a lot bigger when I was there. But the mining's all changed since I was there as well. Yeah. I think when I was there was 5,000 men that worked across the line of load.
Wow.
And but now they'd be getting out more dirt with a lot less people, probably a tenth of that.
Yeah,
and just because the mining techniques have changed, and instead of having a shaft and going in on levels and these sorts of things, they now open cut it and have these great big spiral, declines and inclines they talk about. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, but it was an experience.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So then when I finished on the mines, I had a bit of a tour around Australia.
Okay.
And I had some friends who I also worked with on the mine, some other apprentices, and they'd gotten jobs in Newcastle. So I turned up at Newcastle and hung out there with them and stayed for about 18 months, 2 years, working again as an electrician. I worked on at a coal loader plant at Toronto. That was in construction, and also in construction at Tomigo.
Okay.
And then on Kooragang Island. So the very first coal loader that was on Kooragang Island, which I always see when you and I go to Newcastle, when we visit there, and you can see it across, the other side there. So I worked on that. And then back to Broken Hill. I missed the bush. Went back there and decided I would go out on my own and be an electrician. And one of the things you had to do then was to do some training on keeping books and this sort of stuff, because people were good with being in the trade, but lousy business people. So they wanted you to try and improve. So long story short,
sounds a bit like real estate.
Yeah, well, that's right. And look, and there's so many industries, I think, where there's good people that should stay being good at what they do and not try and own businesses. And,
totally.
I think you would know a lot of people that shouldn't own a business, but they should continue doing what they do. So I started that, and as part of that, I started a bookkeeping course, which was part of the accounting course.
Yep.
And to my surprise and everybody else, I did very well at that, and was topping the class and beating the bankies and all the rest of it. And then it was in about Easter or something like that, I secured a job with the council, the local council.
Yeah.
Went to work for them, got out of my trade and thought, oh, well, I'll try it for a while. Yeah. Continued through all of that and ended up qualifying as an accountant at the end of it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of by
accident,
by accident more than anything.
Yeah.
And then one of the guys who had taught me the law subjects as I went through said, look, I think you've got an aptitude for law.
Yeah.
So why don't you keep going and do law? So I had to do that by correspondence, which was a funny exercise in itself, because when I made the application to the university to start my law degree, they asked me what my HSC results were.
Of course.
And I didn't have any because I'd finished at year 10. So then there was a lot of paperwork that went back and forward. And finally the university said, well, look, we will let you start, but you're not in. We will let you do the first few subjects and then we'll review it. So I did the first few subjects and I didn't ask them to review it and they didn't tell me they were reviewing it. So I just kept going.
Well, I wonder how many people there are out there with an accounting degree and a law degree without an HSC. I bet there's not too many.
Yeah. No, I don't know. So then I ended up leaving council and I went into a superannuation fund, a mine superannuation fund, and I was the accountant for that for a few years.
Yeah.
And whilst that was kind of going on and some of the other studies that were going on, I built a home in Broken Hill as well. So my life was fairly full.
Yeah.
And then I ended up going overseas on a Rotary exchange program for about 6 weeks or so, and I went to Finland. And whilst I was over there, one of the local accountants in Broken Hill reached out to me while I was actually over there and said, would you like to come in and work for me, and we'll talk about partnership in the accounting business. When I came back, I left the superannuation fund and went into to work with him in private practice. So it was in a tax practice, and then for reasons which I will never know, I decided I would go and do a master's in tax law. So you don't get
that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, actually it wasn't too bad because I did it around the same time as the GST came in.
You're going to tell me the chicken story again, aren't you?
No. No, not that's a great yarn, isn't it? So it was kind of it was good to do it at that time because GST was so new.
Yeah.
And therefore, learning about that as part of a master's was So that was good. Then I ended up amalgamating the tax practice with a law practice, and we became a multidisciplinary practice, which was very unusual. I don't know how usual it is now, but it was quite unusual.
Those days, yeah, right. Yeah.
And something you don't know, we also had a bank under roof, so which was a bit crazy at the time. So
I bet Gary Adamson didn't know that either.
That's right. So I have had experience with banks. You might remember the old State Bank. Remember the New South Wales State Bank? So what they decided to do was to franchise that out.
Right.
And I think it was mixed up with Colonial as well at that time.
Yeah.
So they shut the banks and they let private people like ourselves actually run the bank. Wow. So my one claim to fame in life, I had my own ATM machine for a while.
Woohoo! You go.
And then, but then that folded up, and it was taken over by the Commonwealth Bank. Took over the State Bank and moved on from there. So that's the sort of stumbling education side of things.
And so, how did you get to Sydney, and more particularly the REI? Yeah.
So a few things happened. I had a relationship breakdown when I was there.
That happens.
Which I was doing a lot of travelling and and I guess a lot of activities outside of home, as you can probably work out.
Yeah.
So that kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
And the law practice we had out there also had a lot of connections with the mining company. And things changed in litigation for workers' compensation and a series of other things at the time. So that became a less viable business, and I thought it was my time. And at that stage, I had also was in a relationship with my wife Jodie, and you know Jodie.
I do.
So the decision was to move to Sydney.
Yeah.
Which I did. And I worked sort of for
How hard was that to move away from? Because you obviously moved back to the bush.
Yeah,
how hard was
horrendous.
That
horrendous for me initially. I would have gone, what I called home in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So that was quite difficult. I mean, I was used to jumping in the car and driving to my office and parking out the front. We were living at that time in Gordon, and people would say, well, you're close to work. Well, my view was it takes me half an hour from when I get on the train to get to Wynyard, I think, and then I had a 10-minute or so walk. And by the time I added all this up, I thought, I'm spending my life here, just travelling, which to me was crazy. But on reflection, people coming from the Central Coast and the Blue Mountains and that's what they do.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, fortunately, we now live in Camaray, which is about 8 or 10 minutes from the city.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And then I bounced around with a few firms in Sydney.
Yeah.
And one of the firms that I was working for had some partnership issues, if I can call it that, and the firm imploded.
Yeah.
And I found myself looking at unemployment. So I ended up making an application to the Institute to take on the role as the legal counsel, and I was successful there.
Wow.
And then the rest of it is kind of
it is
just how it ended up. But
when was that? When did you start?
2004, I think it was.
And then when did you become the CEO?
About 2 and a bit years after that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
The first president was Christine Castle.
Okay, so you had the first chick.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. First chick and the second chick. Well done, you. Actually, that is one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you are, there are a few men that I know that are really, that are feminists, and you would definitely be one of them. Tell me why you are so passionate about that.
I'm not sure I'd describe myself as a feminist. I think I would describe myself as somebody who doesn't like discrimination.
Yep.
So I just think it is a curse throughout society and throughout the world. So if you discriminate against somebody because they're female, because they practice a certain religion, their sexuality, the colour of their skin, etc., I just think that is really, really wrong and dangerous. Yeah. It's dangerous for a lot of reasons. Physical abuse with people, and but the great Australian saying, fair go, mate, and I live by that. So if people are not allowed to fulfil their full potential because they are Muslim, black, female, whatever it is, and they're held back because of that, then that in my book is wrong.
Yeah.
So, and I, with my wife, she would be one of Australia's top 10 commercial property lawyers, and was very successful in the bigger firms that she was working for.
Yeah.
But I believe that she was unable to progress up the line because she was female. That's and when you look at the partners that proudly put themselves in those positions, what do they call them? Male, stale, and pale.
Male, pale, and stale. Yes, indeed.
So that's that is quite strange to me. The thing that is really interesting in that discussion is the commerciality of it all. I've always been of the view that the commerciality will trump everything. Yeah. So I remember as when I was a little boy, my mother had come through the war, so anything Japanese, hated it, and but over time, because of the products that Japanese were putting out, and because of the quality and the price and all the rest of it, ultimately people got over that because of the quality of the stuff that was coming out, and that was because of price and quality product. And yet I would have thought that if you've got somebody, an employee that can work in your business, and if you let them fulfill their full potential, then commercially that is a really good decision.
Yeah.
And yet in this space, people are prepared to forego a commercial outcome to surround themselves with people
like them.
Yeah. And that to me is quite bizarre.
Yeah, and it's really hard to kind of understand where that thinking comes from, because you're either in one camp or the other. I've had a lot of men around me that are like you, that have a view like you do. Whoever can bring the best to the table is who we should be having, and we need that diversity. But then there's other people who you can't really understand their thinking, but they do tend to surround themselves with people that are like them, and they tend to bully people that are not like them. So yeah, there's a whole lot of psychology in there, I'm sure, that I don't understand. But anyway, Jodie has gone on to have her own very successful property law practice, hasn't she? So, which is
she has, and look, and it's the best thing that happened to her, really. I mean, she's now the master of her own destiny. She's doing extremely well. Yeah. Took a team with her, and the big loser there was the firm that she came from.
Yeah, totally.
They were the loser.
Yeah, for sure.
And I suspect that there are big firms right around the country in law, in accounting, and in other places that are making similar stupid decisions.
Yeah, I'm sure there's no doubt about it. One thing that has always impressed me about you is your desire to have the very best people around you at a board level. I know that there's a lot of CEOs, not just in institutes, but in businesses in general, who might try and pick a board that they will be able to manipulate, that they will be able to actually get their own way with. And you have actively gone out and found people whose opinions and views you might not necessarily agree with, but they're people that you respect. So can you talk me through that process?
Yeah, I suppose the answer to that is that I love this job. I adore it, and I love the industry.
Yeah.
I would describe it as my work, my hobby, and an obsession.
You often say to me that you would do it for free, which is not really very smart when I'm the one who decides what your salary is. But anyway.
And that is still true. I feel very lucky because I just love what I do. Yeah. And therefore to do the job as well as I can, I need to be around people who are industry leaders in their own right. Yeah. There's expressions I think I've heard since I've been in this industry, and if you want to be good, then do the things that good people do, and that is one that I believe. And one of Joe's expressions is choose your role models carefully. So if I'm going to be in a room making decisions, then I want to be in a room making decisions that are based around people with the maximum knowledge of the industry, and that way we will make better decisions. And you are right. The board, in my view, is the number one in the country, and it is there because we tap people on the shoulder.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I always say that when I tell my story. One of the things for me was that I was tapped on the shoulder. It never really occurred to me to get involved in the Institute, to be perfectly honest. But you wanted me to be part of it, and I'll be forever grateful that you did, because I've absolutely loved my time at the Institute. And when it's finally over, it will be over, won't it, one day? I know I'll really miss it.
Yeah, well, as we always say, you're the second female in 110 plus years. It's more than that now.
Yeah.
And the only one to have done 2 terms. So
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Someone asked me the other day if I was going to go for 3 terms, and it's like, oh no, I think they'll be glad to get rid of me by the end of next year. So what are the hardest parts of your job?
Well, there's nothing I find hard. There's because again, I like what I do or love what I do. I don't find any of it hard. I have huge admiration for people that get themselves out of bed each day and have to go and do a job that they hate.
Yeah.
So that would be hard, and I don't have that. I have frustrations though, enormous frustrations dealing with our regulator.
No,
as you know,
really?
Yeah, no, true.
I'm shocked.
And the bit that frustrates me, put very succinctly, is that I want to improve the consumer's experience with this industry by lifting the standards of this industry.
Yeah.
All right. It's education, it's professionalism, and that will improve the consumer's experience. Now, why do I have to fight the consumer advocate to do that? That's the bit I don't understand. I've never understood. I know. And I continue to be that way.
I have to say that was the thing. Obviously, I'd been on the board for a long time before I was president, so I knew that there were a lot of frustrations around some of those issues. But because I wasn't really privy to it, I wasn't in the meetings, I didn't really understand it, and that has been the biggest shock to me. The way government and the regulator works. And, you know, I do have a lot of respect for Peter Dunphy, who's in at Fair Trading. I've got a great relationship with Peter, and he's been really, really helpful to me, but he's had to get involved a whole lot of times when he shouldn't have to.
No.
That's been a big shock to me.
Yeah. But I just, I've said, it just does my head in. If we were trying to pursue something that was inappropriate and there were going to be poor outcomes, then I understand why the regulator would resist us. But they continue to elude me of what the agenda they're pursuing.
You are incredibly determined and passionate about what you want to achieve. How do you keep that going, even when you kind of get slapped down, or you get nowhere with the government or with the regulator, and you think you're getting somewhere, and then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from underneath you? How do you keep that fire going?
Yeah, I describe myself as not somebody who's overly bright. No, I mean sincerely. I mean I'm not one of those clever people who you put something in front of them, they go, yeah, got it. I've never been like that. I think I'm a hard worker, and I think I'm determined. That's probably the 2 things that I have going for me. And I know that I will win this battle that I'm having, because I don't know how to give up.
Yeah.
And that's seen me through so many things in life. If you are somebody who refuses to give up, then ultimately you have to win. It doesn't matter what you do. You will win if you don't know how to give up.
I've got this mental image of Tim at 95 going, no, I can't retire yet. We're not out of fair trading yet. I can't retire. Is that going to be the case?
Yeah, well, I mean, if that's the case, yes. Like I said, I've never doubted that we would succeed. I don't know when. But we, as you know, we push down a certain avenue, and we get blocked, and we reverse up and go down another one.
Sure.
But very, very pleasingly now we have legislation, or a bill, I should say. Jumping the gun here, it's not legislation yet, but it's gone into the upper house of state parliament, and so will it get through parliament? Well. It's a private members' bill, so they're always going to be difficult.
They're
but
tricky.
we'll pursue that as hard as we can, and if that's not successful, then pick ourselves up and go in another direction.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We will win.
We will win. Well, on that note, we've actually been chatting for half an hour. I know that doesn't really feel like that. So I'm going to you get back to your busy day and just say thank you so much. It's been lovely to be able to share your story with a few more people. So thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure.